what I felt like was I was letting myself down, right? Like I could show up for other people. I would never let anybody else down, but all of the promises I made to myself, I was breaking.
Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero? Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and I'm really happy to bring you something today that I've actually never really been able to bring before, and that is a conversation with somebody I've actually worked with. You know, when you work in this field and you help people when they're at their lowest, a lot of times they don't really want to talk about it even after they've gotten better, right? So maybe things have vastly improved, maybe they haven't, but you know, it's not exactly the sort of conversation most people want to have. And today you're going to hear from Julia, and Julia and I have actually known each other now for about 2 years. We did the work together about 2 years ago, and Julia was a heavy drinker. She had partied and drank a lot throughout her life, really since college, and had been struggling with it on and off, but she really liked drinking, so she didn't really want to stop, and it wasn't causing massive consequences yet, but it was starting to build, and she knew that it was getting bad, and you know, there were some of those nights where she didn't remember everything that happened, and then she also knew that this level of drinking was starting to make her feel terrible, her body. She was getting weight. She was having a lot of those effects that so many people experience with heavy drinking, and she didn't want to call herself an alcoholic. Her life was actually relatively manageable and everything was working pretty well. She was kind of successful as a coach. And so she was really looking for something different. You know, she came to me like so many other people show up, just really struggling at the time with her drinking and being at a loss. She had no idea what else to do. She tried everything else, and nothing really worked to get her the results that she wanted. And so I was kind of like a last attempt. And I got to admit, you know, oftentimes I'm either the first thing people try or the last attempt they'll make after rehabs and AA meetings and all the very traditional kind of things that they've tried before. And Julia had actually never been to treatment. She tried everything else other than treatment. She tried, you know, going to therapists and working through things on her own. And she'll talk about some of her experiences. But what I love about being able to bring Julia on is that when you listen to the process of somebody's recovery, when you listen to the actual process of what it took for them to get better, you find out that it's actually kind of nice. It's not this drudgery. It's not this hell that they had to go through. And to me, that's the entire point. That's the reason I wrote the Abstinence Myth book. It's the reason we have the Ignited Hero program. It's the reason I work with people one-on-one. Is so often people think that to get to the other side of suffering, everything has to be painful. Now, you absolutely have to go through some challenging times. But what I actually found is that because so many of us feel so trapped and so mired and so caught up in negativity anyway in our everyday life, even those challenges are so rewarding when you get to the other side of them that you start looking forward to them, right? I mean, I know that works in my own life for sure. I've seen it work in hundreds and hundreds of different people's lives. We get so used to that cloud, that gray cloud that travels around with us and rains on our brain all the time, that when we find an opportunity to get some relief, it's a little scary. And, you know, we're a little apprehensive and there's a little fear that maybe it won't work or maybe we're too far gone to get the help. But inevitably what I find is once you start doing the work, people are excited. People are excited to get better. And, you know, the whole point around Ignited, the recovery side of what we do, is really to help people find a happy, joyful, content, and meaningful and purposeful life on the other side of these struggles, not just a life that is devoid of problems. Because, look, in the end, none of us want a life that is just devoid of problems, right? We want a life that we're happy with. And so one of the things I love about Julia is the non-traditional, but then also at the same time, the unexpected end result that she got. And I'm going to let you listen to the interview. I don't really want to ruin the surprise there, but Julia got more than she bargained for. And I think that's pretty common in these experiences. So I want you to just settle in, pay attention to the details, look at how this process can unfold in this really, really beautiful way. And just like it has for Julia, I want you to also know that if you're struggling yourself, or if you know somebody else's struggles, there's help. There's the book, which we're giving away for free with shipping right now, and we'll put a link to theabstinencemyth.com in the show notes. If you're more serious about it and you want to dig in deeply, there's our Ignited Hero program, and that's at ignitedrecovery.com, IGNTD recovery.com. And we actually just recently opened up an intro version of that, and so we'll even have a link for that if you're not quite ready to jump full into the process. And then if you want to work one-on-one, obviously reach out to us, and I do that work as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please, if you know somebody else who's struggling and maybe hasn't found a route that works for them, send them this, send them a little bit of hope. Let's go fix this. So welcome, Julia, and thank you so much for being willing to do this. I'm so happy to talk to you. It's been a few months since we've talked, so this is really fun for me. And I was thinking, a lot of people, when they are first trying to figure out what to do, what they're looking for is really a place to understand and connect with others who have been through similar struggles. So do you mind telling me a little bit? I know for you it was drinking. What was going on with drinking for you, let's say in the few years around the time before you found me?
So my drinking had gotten progressively worse by session. So I wasn't drinking every day, but when I was drinking a lot. And what I found was that after I had my second drink, it was a foregone conclusion that, if I had one and then I had two, it was going to be an all-night thing.
Got it.
And I didn't really have bad feelings around alcohol per se. I liked drinking and I liked partying, but I had stuff I wanted to do. I was in the process of writing a book. I had all of these goals. I had just sort of launched a new side of my business. And what I found was the days after I drank, I couldn't produce. I couldn't write. I couldn't articulate anything. And so, and I couldn't stop. I believed I couldn't stop. So I was stuck. Yeah, you were stuck. I like, that's a good phrase. And you tried a bunch of things. I tried a bunch of things, all of which involved judging myself, flogging myself, shaming myself. I really had a lot of bad feelings around who I was as a person because it had become part of my life. Mm-hmm. And I think everything that I had tried was about abstinence or cutting things out of my life or willpower or just being a good enough person or a strong enough person to make it not happen for me anymore. And all that did was just result in just sort of a vicious circle of discontent and self-loathing. Yeah. And I remember, that's such a common place for a lot of people to find themselves in, right? As I'm trying things, I'm actually feeling worse and worse about myself as I keep quote unquote failing. Yes. And it becomes more and more hopeless. And what I felt like was I was letting myself down, right? Like I could show up for other people. I would never let anybody else down, but all of the promises I made to myself, I was breaking. And with each time that I broke a promise to myself, my self-esteem got lower and lower. And then I just started to label myself by all of these habits that I had. And it like I said, it just became a circle. And I don't even know now how much of it was real. I was just really, really stuck in it. And the interesting thing was I didn't really want to stop drinking per se. I just wanted to stop not being able to control my drink. I love it. So common. I don't want to stop drinking. I just want my life to not be falling apart because of drinking anymore. Yeah, I don't want to be a slave to it. I want to be able to make my own choices. That's what I wanted. And I didn't, and I'm not sure that I believed that was possible because I believed that I had an addictive personality and that I was a person who had problems with self-control and I had other things in my life that I used as coping strategies like food, junk food, stuff like that. And I was smoking at the time. And so I think I just sort of put it all together. And this idea that I had was just, I'm just not the kind of girl who can do this, right? I have a problem. I'm a flawed person. I'm broken as a human.
Yeah. I'm broken. I have all these things. Here's all this evidence that I'm broken, and I'm going to be broken forever.
Yeah.
So common. And so you ended up trying all the things that you had tried, and then you found naltrexone somehow, and you actually spoke to an ex-client of mine.
Yeah.
Who told you about the work that I was doing.
So what was really interesting is that I had given the article about naltrexone to that client of yours, right? So I had he had been struggling for some time. We had talked at a wedding. I had remembered the article. It was in the Atlantic. I gave it to him. And then, now this was, I don't know, a year, 18 months later, I reached out to him and said, hey, did you ever try naltrexone? And he said, yeah, I did. He told me about you. And then I saw him after that, shortly after that, and he was a totally different human being. And that was when I reached out.
Yeah. So you reached out, and again, to put it in context, you weren't looking to stop drinking. You were looking for drinking to not be controlling your life anymore. And this seemed like potentially a good avenue.
I wanted to stop binge drinking is what I wanted.
Yep. Yeah. If you remember when we first started, and I love this because you're such a go-getter, like you get things done. And I remember when we first talked, you were like, hey, I heard about this method. I've heard you use this with somebody else with some success. I just want to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, cool. Here's the way it works. And I kind of gave you the outline of the method. And I said, at some point after we get the drinking under control, we're going to want to dig in a little under the hood and figure out what's going on. And I remember you kind of looked at me and said, okay, whatever. I don't really think I need that. I've been in therapy. I've done the work. Just handle the drinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I hope that what I did was what I do a lot of times, which is kind of roll with it and go, sure, let's do it.
Whatever's going to work for you. Yeah. Whatever's going to work for you, however you want it. I think, the biggest thing that I had heard about you was that there wasn't going to be any shame.
Yeah.
And I think I intuitively knew, and I'm a coach and I lead women through things in their lives. I think I intuitively knew that the shame was just blocking all the progress. Yeah. And so when that was validated with me, right away from the first session, like whatever you want, however you want to do this, whatever it looks like to you, it's fine with me, right? Yeah. We'll do it your way. It just, all my defenses were down then. And it became about what was happening versus why it was happening,
Totally.
Who I was, right? It became about being aware of it all.
Yeah. So in Ignited, I have 3 principles around shame, and they're honest exploration and radical acceptance. And it's partially my job to give the radical acceptance, but we pretty quickly got your drinking under control. Like it was actually a pretty quick 2 or 3 sessions when the drinking really dropped substantially. The naltrexone was working. We were working on the dose and all that specifics.
The naltrexone worked for me for sure. I mean, from the very first time I took it, it worked for me. I had issues with the naltrexone around, I had emotional issues with it. It made me, in the days after, it made me depressed.
Yeah.
But it worked so well that, and what you encouraged me to do is sort of talk through the depression, right? So, and it wasn't even depression as much as it was, everything just felt negative. I felt, it was a harsh feeling. It felt harsh to me. Yeah. But what was great about it was that it was so effective that I was willing to put up with whatever came from it. And then as it turned out, I really needed just a very, very small amount of naltrexone.
Totally. You needed a much lower dose than other people talked about. And so we worked through the dosing and it worked well. And then as I predicted in the beginning, you finally got a little bit of a release from the alcohol. And now some of the things that you really were looking to work on came to the forefront. And as a spoiler to everybody listening right now, you actually don't drink now.
I don't drink now. We were talking about this the other day. It was 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, 25 months ago that I reached out to you. I stopped binge drinking almost immediately. I mean, it was within 3 months' time, the issue as it stood was gone. Cool. But then the real exploration started, right?
Yeah.
What am I getting from this? And why do I feel awkward in these social situations? And what are the things that I'm saying about myself? And where are the areas of my life I'm not really giving myself a chance, not really realistic? And then eventually what happened was that on the awareness, you just start to become really aware of where you feel good and where you feel bad. At least I did. And I think before I wasn't aware of that at all. I think it's really easy to settle into a normal that doesn't feel good.
Yes.
And you don't recognize how everything from, how physically lethargic I was to my sleep patterns to these tremendous mood swings that I was having that were all related to self-esteem issues, but also kind of self-abuse issues, right? Just literally abusing myself in different ways. And once I released all that and I would have these moments of just feeling amazing, then it's really easy to get tied into what makes me feel good and what makes me feel bad. And once that became really clear, the alcohol it's just not attractive to me anymore. I just, even the thought of it, and it's not hard. It's not a struggle. I don't struggle through the day not having a drink. I don't want one.
Yeah.
And I didn't, that was a surprise for me because at one point you had suggested, do you want to stop drinking? And I was like, no, I don't want to quit drinking. I always want to be able to drink. And I still feel like I could drink if I wanted to. I don't feel like if I did, everything would topple over and it would all begin again. I'm not afraid of it. I'm just not interested in it.
Yeah. And I think that's, to me, the most beautiful piece is so many of us, now in the book, I kind of lay out some of these specifics about we all focus on the substance so much that we believe that if we just remove the substance, everything else will get better. And what we do is if we flip that equation, we say, well, once we make everything better, the substance doesn't even matter. And you're kind of the quintessential example of that because it almost like abstinence almost hit you by mistake.
Yeah, it did. And it's interesting is that I have a group of friends. I have a life. I came from a family that was party oriented, right? And I have a huge group of party friends and I have a big social life. There's alcohol in my house. It's just always been drinking. And I am still involved in all of that. Like I still go to all the parties. My husband and I go out on the weekend. I still sit at the bar. All the stuff I do. So I think all the stuff that I had believed sort of, I never did AA or anything like that, but you hear about it, right? You hear, well, you're going to have to get new friends. You're going to have to, you have all these triggers and all this stuff, and you're going to have to avoid that. And I just didn't really want any part of that. I didn't. And as it turned out, I didn't need any part of that. I all of this stuff about those things that brought me joy, I had to get in touch with. That when I go to a party with my friends, it's not the being messed up that brings me joy. Although I'm not going to lie, that there was fun in that for me.
Sure.
And the idea of it is still fun for me. The payoff, I think, is it not very fun for me now. But all the other stuff that gave me joy in those instances, I've totally lost touch with.
Yeah.
And now it's all back. And so everything, all of my experiences now are heightened. And if you had asked me what I thought about being sober, I would have told you that it would have made everything in my life dull. So it really was the opposite of how I expected it to go.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Because now, as you pointed out, not only is drinking not a part of your life, but you're not worried about it. So it's not one of those things where you're worrying to yourself, I have to go to a dinner, people will be drinking. Yeah. What do I do?
No, I don't. And I did worry about it. I did worry about getting loud or getting out of control no, I don't have any of those thoughts, nor do I have thoughts of, I don't want to go. And I think that, it's really interesting. I would have never, before we started this, I would have never thought that I was a socially awkward person, like extremely social. But that's one of the things that came out of it for me is this constant self-judgment, which is, manifests itself in believing that you're being judged by other people, right? So it's just real nasty stuff going on in here. And that's gone now. So the idea of going into a social setting now is, it's just straight up fun. Ugh. So that was a side effect of it that I didn't was a nice little side buddy.
Yeah, so great. And you call it a side benefit. I think that's really where the rubber meets the road, is we all just want to feel good in our own skin, being able to show up every day consistently as who we really are, not who we think other people want us to be. And I remember, later on in our process, really digging into, you grew up with two brothers, and I remember really talking quite a bit about, you never really felt like you could measure up, and now all of a sudden you're actually the strongest one. You're the one standing up and holding everything together.
Yeah, that was, I think everybody has sort of those family stories, right? About who you're kind of cast to be and what your role is. And so I had 6 brothers altogether. 2 of them that were much closer to my dad. And I always had that kind of girl thing going on, right? Where I wasn't respected like the boys, and then I wanted to be. And so there was always a lot of striving. And when my dad passed away, it was, for lack of a better phrase, it was kind of a shit show in our family, right? It was one of the worst times of my life around drinking. It was really a time of very, very excessive drinking and a ton of shame for me. Yeah. And, then 10 years later, when my mom passed, I had gone through this work with you, and I was terrified that the same thing was going to happen again, that I was just going to slide right back into it. And not only did that not happen, but I was the one that was sort of carrying everybody through, keeping it all together and really leading the charge. And I would have, that was totally new for me, but really in line with the way everything else in my life was going.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
If you can give people one sentence, people who are kind of thinking about, being on the fence, not really sure, it'll be so useful to hear somebody else's experience. But if you had one phrase for people who are feeling stuck, feeling unsure about, do you take the leap? Do you just dive in and give this a try, even in the face of all the things that didn't work before? What would you say?
I would say give yourself a chance. I think, what I perceived all of this, then and now, was that I was giving this system a chance, right? Give this process a chance, give this a chance, give that a chance. But the thing that I think you helped me do more than anything was give myself a chance, right? Just see yourself. If you could just see yourself in a new way, if you could just give yourself a shot, and believe that there isn't anything wrong with you, right? There's nothing wrong with you. It's a habit.
Yeah.
It's natural how you get there. Tons of people get there. Because once I gave myself a chance, everything in my life has changed. Amazing. So it's just, and it wasn't painful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for saying that last piece. It doesn't have to be painful.
Yeah.
You can actually enjoy the process while you get better. It's kind of magical.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for taking time.
My pleasure.
All the amazing work that you do out there. We'll connect people with all of your stuff too, so that when they need guidance on what happens when they're done with this piece, they can come to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful, and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.